Good morning to everyone. And as we did yesterday, we'll begin with some of our traditional chanting. So we'll start off with the dedication of offerings.
Page 3.
Okay. Yo so bhagava arahang samma sambuddho sawakato yena bhagavata tammo supatipanoya samagavato sawaka sangho Dhamayang Bhagavan Tang Sadamang Sasangang Emehi Sakare Hiyata Rahang Aropite Hiyabhipujayama Sadhu no Pante Bhagava Suchiraparini Bhutopi Pachima Janathanuka Pamanasam Eme Sakare Dukhatapana Karabute Patiganhatu Amhakang Digaratang Hita Yasukaya Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Annamayang Buddhassa Bhagavato Bhuvapakanamakaraṁ Aromase Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Chant the Buddha's words on loving kindness, which is found on page 36. English version, yes. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So, as yesterday, begin with offering a few reflections on our theme for the weekend. But before I begin, please, everybody, make sure your phones are switched off. Even if you have the thought, I know I've switched it off, please check and switch it off. Because I said it a few times yesterday and phones were still going off through the day. So even if you're sure your phone is switched off, please check. Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much. Chanting these verses on loving kindness, we can think of and sometimes the practice of loving kindness meditation is presented as a separate individual form of sort of training of meditation. But I like to emphasize the need for loving kindness as a basis for all practice, whatever aspect of Dhamma. Whatever the basis of the Dhamma practice is, whatever you're trying to do. Thank you. So loving kindness is whether we're thinking of concentration practice or insight practice or walking, sitting, daily life practice. There we go. It's a new kind of mindfulness these days. So to have as a basis that quality of kindness and acceptance, even accepting mobile phones going off at various times, the attitude of non-contention, not making anything into a problem or something that shouldn't be. So that loving kindness is not just repeating the words, may I be happy, may I be well, may all beings be happy, but it's more the attitude of heart, the openness of heart that those words are designed to bring. That's the point of it. So I like to emphasize that, say, in developing concentration and developing insight, that sense of metta, not just as an outgoing well-wishing, but I would say that loving kindness, metta, the practice of metta, has an expressive quality, outgoing, but also a receptive quality, and that quality of openness of heart, or what I call a radical acceptance, is that attitude that everything belongs, whether we like it or don't like it, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable, everything belongs. It's all a part of the natural order. Doesn't mean to say that everything that belongs is helpful, skillful, or beneficial, not at all, but here it is. So even if you have, say, aches and pains, illnesses, difficulties in the family, we don't choose those things. We don't ask to have illnesses or disabilities or the limitations that come with the aging process, but here they are. This is the way it is. So metta as that receptive, the quality of acceptance, I feel that's an important basis of Dhamma practice. And then having opened the heart to everything, here it all is, then the natural wisdom quality of the heart is brought into play, whereby there's a recognition, this is wholesome, this is unwholesome, this is neutral, that then everything belongs, here it all is. But if this is followed, if this is unwholesome, then it leads to painfulness and difficulty and conflict. If this which is wholesome, beneficial is followed, then it'll lead to peace and clarity and harmony and to benefit. So everything belongs, but then is the openness of heart, and then the wisdom, mindfulness and wisdom faculty is brought to bear to discriminate, to discern what's going to be a good way to work with this present situation, life as we experience it at this moment. And so that if we can establish metta, that loving kindness as a basis, then when we're working with concentration, we're working with insight, we're working with our daily life practice of in the family, in the community, in the workplace, then we are working with a heart free of conflict. We're not contending against anything. So non-contention, that not making anything into a problem or an enemy or an intrusion, that is in a way the basis of loving kindness. And so I like to encourage that. And just like the breath, the in-breath is the receptive aspect of breathing. We take the air in. We breathe in because we need the oxygen to stay alive. We breathe out to let go of the carbon dioxide that we don't need. So there's a receptive and an expressive aspect to breathing. And I would say in loving kindness practice, it's that like the breath, taking in the oxygen is the really important part. That's what I would say in the practice of metta. It's that openness of heart, that radical acceptance. That's the life source. That's really what makes the basis of loving kindness strong and genuine and truly beneficial. That the heart of loving kindness is that radical acceptance, and then the well-wishing towards this being and other beings is say the follow-on or the result of that, the natural result of that. Having breathed in, then we breathe out. Having opened the heart to all things, then we wish well to all things. Also then going to our theme, the practice of anatta in daily life, not so the importance of reflections or the attitude of not self in daily life. I hope that what we were looking at and working with in terms of meditation and Dhamma reflections yesterday has been useful. So I'll try to extend that a little bit today. So one of the themes that Ajhan Sumedho used to talk about and emphasize a lot in the about 30 years ago, early years of Amaravati Monastery, he would say that if we have the attitude of I'm an unenlightened person who needs to do something now in order to become enlightened in the future, then our practice is never going to really be liberating. I mean, you might hear that word and they say, but I am an unenlightened person and I have got to do something to be enlightened in the future. What's wrong with that? But he would dwell on this theme and talk about this over and over again for several years. This was a central Dhamma teaching. Then he would encourage a change of paradigm. What in the scientific and in the spiritual world at that time, they were using the phrase paradigm shift a lot. Fritjof Capra had published The Tao of Physics and The Turning Point, and talking about the paradigm shift. So Luang Por Sumedho was saying that we need a paradigm shift in terms of our Dhamma practice. So if we are thinking in those terms, I'm an unenlightened person who's got to do something now in order to become enlightened in the future. In that very framework, then we say, I am a person. That's sort of, in a way, self-view is being inked in, is being established. Like you're starting from the position of self-view, so that I am this person who is unenlightened. And if I can get this enlightenment stuff, then over in the future, I will be an enlightened person, and that will be good. So he would say, notice that if the mind creates that, it seems very ordinary, very obvious, very matter of fact, as I was saying yesterday, we use our names and our addresses and our identification numbers and so forth very naturally, very easily. But that if we recognize that that can't be the whole story, then liberation is possible. So he would say we need to change the paradigm, change the pattern of thinking from I'm an unenlightened person who's got to do something now in order to be enlightened in the future, to being awake now. And not like being a person who is awake now, but just awake. being awake now. And that and I remember hearing that back in the mid 1980s, late 80s, and he was saying this over and over and over again. And it takes a while for, as they say, for the penny to drop, in a way to get a sense, because on our ordinary everyday thinking, well, I am a person, if I'm not a person, what am I? But say that assumption that in a way that's saying I am the five khandhas, I'm the body, I am feelings, I'm my personality, this is who and what I am, and it's taking that to be some kind of absolute reality. And if we want to develop this insight or use the principle of anatta in daily life, there needs to be that questioning of, well, what does the Buddha mean when he says the five khandhas, the rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, are not self? They are anicca, dukkha, anatta. They are in a state of change. They are unsatisfactory, and they are not who and what we are. So why does the Buddha say that? The Buddha is an great enlightened master of supreme wisdom, and he's saying the five khandhas are not self. So what does that say about this thing of I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm Indian, I'm British, I'm American? that those I ams can, if we take the Buddha's teaching seriously, that the five khandhas are not self, those designations can only be relatively true. Our name, our address, our location, nationality, these are all human agreements. These are all just convenient designations that we use to get by in the world. But the Buddha's teaching on anatta, the five khandhas are not self, is a way of saying, no, that's not the whole story. Look. And insight meditation is the way that we look. So there's a few teachings I thought I would share with you. I use a lot. They can seem a little bit subtle or are not particularly related to your, but what do I do in the office, Ajhan? You don't know, what about my family? How is this relevant? But I would feel this, even though this principle that Luang Por Sumedho was talking about in that paradigm shift, it can seem like, oh, well, what's the difference? Or how does that change anything? I would say it changes a lot. It's a subtle shift of perspective, but it makes all the difference in the world. Rather like if a wheel is perfectly fixed on its axle, then it'll run true. But if it's off, if it's not straight, it's not truly settled on its axle, then the wheel will be wobbling all over the place. So that if that shift is just done in the right way, then the wheel runs true and runs smoothly. And in fact, the word dukkha, apparently, in the construction of the word dukkha, it comes from two parts, du and akka. Du means wrong or bad or imbalanced or incorrect, and the akka is like the English word axle. It's like the spindle or the pin that a wheel runs on. So du akka is like when the wheel is out of kilter, is out of balance. So that's the embodiment of dukkha. Like when you at the airport you get a cart with a wonky wheel, or at the supermarket. I don't know if Indian supermarkets have these trolleys with wheels on, but when you get one with a wonky wheel, you're driving into the carousel at the airport, or into the wrong the side of the aisle at the supermarket. So, or if you're pushing up your child's buggy, has got a wonky wheel, you're always kind of having to work to keep straight. Dukkha. So the first of the teachings I thought I'd share with you is from a dialogue with a devata called Rohitassa. So one night this deva, Rohitassa, appeared to the Buddha and started this conversation and said, man, before I was born in this form, I was a human being in the world as a yogi. And I made this resolution, I'm going to travel, I'm going to walk to the end of the world. And even though I walked and I walked and walked, and I didn't stop for anything except to answer the calls of nature, and I kept walking, I couldn't reach the end of the world, no matter how far I walked, and I died on the journey, and I was reborn in this deva state. So I want to ask you, the Rohitassa asked the Buddha, so I want to ask you, is it possible to reach the end of the world by walking? And then the Buddha responds, very probably many of you are familiar with this story. The Buddha says, you cannot reach the end of the world by walking, and if you don't reach the end of the world, you won't reach the end of suffering. So it's a bit of a puzzle. Huh? And so then he goes on to explain to Rohitassa that he's been looking at it in the wrong way and saying, it is in this very fathom-long body, this 2-meter-long body, with its thoughts and its perceptions, there is the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the way leading to the cessation of the world. So again, many of you will recognize that's almost identical to the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, but in that expression, the word the world, loka, has been substituted for dukkha. Four Noble Truths, there is dukkha, suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So in that teaching, he's saying, equating the world with dukkha, which might seem a bit strange according to modern day thinking, but he goes on to explain that that's the way. If you reach the end of the world, then you reach the end of suffering. And in that particular dialogue, he doesn't explain it in a lot more detail than that. But in a related teaching, you find in the connected discourses, later on in the same collection, the Sutta de Rohitassa, I think, is in the Deva Samyutta at the beginning, and then later on in the connected discourses about the I think the six senses, section 35. This particular sutta is called the world, and the Buddha says that whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world, that is called the world, loka, in this Dhamma and discipline. And so, and what is it whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world? So those two words are in Pali. A perceiver of the world is loka sanyi, and a conceiver of the world is lokamani. So how you perceive the world, or how you create the idea of the world in the mind. It is the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. So this is the world of our own experience. So, and that is very, very significant, that I feel that when the Buddha says the world arises, there's the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the way leading to the cessation of the world, it's talking about our mind's representation of the world. How, like in this moment, here we are in the shrine room at Dhammarama, and we say, well, we're all here in this room, and we're sharing this Sunday morning together, but this room is in your mind, right? I'm seeing you. You're seeing me and the other monks in the shrine. Wherever we're sitting in the room, our perspective is defined by that. So none of us actually experience the world. We all experience our mind's version of the world, depending on where we're sitting in the room, our name, our family history, our language, our life story, our life conditioning. All of that conditions your ability to understand English, or not understand English. All of that comes together to make our own mind's version of the world. This is the only world that we can meaningfully talk about. So when the Buddha says the world, he doesn't mean like the cosmos with the planets and the stars and the infinite space and so forth. He said the world of our experience is the world. We said, what is the world? The eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind. So this, I feel, is very, very significant, because what it's saying is that, you know, the world as we know it is the world to pay attention to. And that if we make that world solid and real, and then that feeds self-view. I am this person, I'm passing through time, I am in this place, this is where I am. So that attachment to and making those perceptions solid and so apparently real feeds that sense of self-view. I am this person. I was born on this particular day. I'm so many years old. And I'm passing through time, and I'm going from this place to that place. And as long as the mind sees things in terms of that time and space and personhood, then we're creating dukkha. That's why I know this is a bit of a subtle teaching and a little bit hard to follow, but that's why the Buddha, when he's talking to Rohitassa, he lines up the world with dukkha. As long as the world is seen as solid and real and permanent and out there, then we're creating dukkha. When the world is known as a succession of perceptions and impressions, as a field of experience arising in our mind in this moment, and it's known that the world is empty, it's not, there's no thing that's absolutely solid and permanent and real there, then the heart can be unburdened. We're not conceiving ourselves as an independent entity passing through time, located in one particular place. But those are seen as impressions that arise because of our conditioning and the choices that we've made and the experiences of our lifetime. So I realize this is not easy to follow. And we'll have some time for some questions later on. But I do feel this is very important, because it's only if we can let go of those automatic habits. I am this person. This is where I am. This is my name. This is my job. This is my family, and this is who and what I am. That is self-view. That's Sakkaya-ditthi, obstacle number one, Sangyoja number one to enlightenment. And when the mind can recognize, oh, this is just a set of perceptions arising and passing away, they cannot be solid. The world is empty. It's sunya. It's a set of appearances and seemings. What is apparently real, like going to a really good movie, you get drawn right into the story. If it's a really good movie, you completely forget yourself and you're lost in the story. And then, oh my goodness, it's a movie. So the movie of our life is the story that we get lost in, because it's so convincing. It's very well produced, great direction and convincing characters. So we get lost in that movie. So the Buddha's teaching in this respect is extraordinarily helpful. And they're saying, the world is the world of our experience. And if it's and the ending of the world and the ending of dukkha is like the mind that sees the empty nature of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thought, and feeling. The mind that knows these are sunya. They are empty. They are not self. They are impermanent, unsatisfactory. The mind that genuinely knows that is then freed from limitation by those perceptions, those experiences, so that it's the mind that is aware of the body and of the world. That awareness is not limited by the world, and that's why freedom, that's why liberation is possible. So I hope you can follow that little part of the teaching. So when Ajahn Chah was still alive and still teaching, back in the late 70s, I was very fortunate to arrive at his monastery, the Western Branch, in 1978, and he was still active and teaching for another couple of years, 2 or 3 years after that. I was very fortunate to be around him, and so I couldn't speak much Thai, but there were often other Westerners who could translate. And when people came to visit Ajahn Chah, often he would ask this question. He liked to give people puzzles and put questions to them and get them thinking. He didn't just sort of make chit chat. But so sometimes completely new people he'd never met before would come to visit, and he'd say, if you can't go forward and you can't go back and you can't stand still, where can you go? They go, sideways? You climb a tree? Go up in a balloon? He said, no, you can't go. There's no balloons. You can't dig a hole. Can't go sideways. Where can you go? And then people would have a bit of a dialogue with him, and he'd play with them and just get them thinking. And they, I don't know, Lumpur, please tell me. And he'd say, that as long as you think of yourself in terms of the 5 khandhas, of the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, then the puzzle can't be solved. It's only when the mind lets go of identification with the body, with the personality, with time, with place, then the puzzle is solved. That was actually his very last message to Lumpur Sumedho, when he knew his health was fading, and he wrote him a letter. And I was actually there at Chithurst Monastery when Lumpur Sumedho received this letter from Lumpur Cha, which he'd never got a letter from him before, and it was another Western monk living in Ajahn Chah's monastery had started it by saying, "You're not going to believe this, but Lumpur asked me to take dictation today, so he wanted me to send you a letter." And the letter from Lumpur Cha, so this was really the last message before his health collapsed, was whenever you have feelings of love or hate for anything whatsoever, these will be your aids and partners in building paramita. The Buddha Dhamma is not to be found in moving forwards, nor in moving backwards, nor in standing still. This, Sumedho, is your place of non-abiding. The Buddha Dhamma is not to be found in moving forwards, nor in moving backwards, nor in standing still. This is your place of non-abiding. So there's Ajahn Chah knew that Ajahn Sumedho started up this new monastery in the West, and it was a whole new culture, new country, a whole new adventure. So rather than a whole list of do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, these are my final instructions. That was the basic principle of don't be attached to the five khandhas. The Buddha Dharma is not to be found in moving forwards, nor in moving backwards, nor in standing still. And in that teaching, Lumpur Cha is drawing upon a passage I would suggest from the Udana. Probably, again, quite a few of you are familiar with this, where the Buddha is speaking about the nature of ultimate reality. And he says, there is that ayatana, that sphere of being, that dimension, where there is no coming into being, no passing away, no origination, no disappearance, no sun, no moon, no stars, no coming, no going, no standing still. And this is a paraphrase. No coming, no going, no standing still. And this, I tell you, is the end of suffering. So my guess is that Lumpur Cha was using that as a basis of his more sort of informal question and puzzle that he put to people, but it's exactly that same phrasing that the Buddha uses in the Udana. There is that dimension, that ayatana, that sphere of being, that the if you like, the unconditioned, where there's no coming, no going, no standing still. So, in terms of our practice, and in terms of anatta in daily life, what this it means is that when we notice I am going somewhere, I'm crossing the room, I'm going into downtown Delhi, I'm going to Varanasi, I'm going to Dharamsala, that it's like, yes, the body's getting on the bus or getting in the car or getting on the plane, but where is that happening? It's happening here. There's the perception of getting into a car. There's the perception of the buildings arising and passing away in your vision. There's the perception of sitting on a plane and the Himalayas outside the window. But where is that happening? It's all happening here in the sphere of awareness. And so this is I say maybe it sounded a little bit remote, but in terms of the development of the practice of daily life, the more that we can recognize that the world arises in the mind and ceases in the mind, the more that the mind can know that the world is a flow of patterns of perception and experience, then the more that we will be able to be at peace and to function. It's mysterious, but the more that we see the world is empty, the more effectively we can function with it. That's a real puzzle. That the effect of seeing that the world arises and passes in the mind doesn't mean that we're kind of spaced out or dissociated or disconnected, but instead it brings a kind of perfect attunement. It's like in an orchestra, the conductor doesn't play an instrument, right? The conductor is at the middle paying attention to the whole orchestra, and everyone in the orchestra is partly paying attention to the conductor and their music. So the conductor is that principle at the center that integrates everything. So that if we establish this insight that the world is not happening in the mind, we see that we never really go anywhere, but all we experience is conditions of mind changing, then there's a stillness, there's a peacefulness, an ease in our life. And again, in the very end of Ajahn Chah's life, the very last little puzzle he used to put to people in the last couple of years of his life, I only heard him speak about this once or twice before I left Thailand in '79, was he would say, have you ever seen still water? And people say, well yes, yeah, look there in your glass, yeah, water is still. So have you ever seen flowing water? So yeah, I've seen rivers and streams and waterfalls. And they say, well, have you ever seen still flowing water? And people, what does he mean? Nam Lai Ning. in the Thai language. Have you ever seen still flowing water? And again, they say, you ever seen that? Do you know what that is? And then people, I don't know, Lumpur, please tell me. Again, he would get people to think about it and guess and try and use their understanding. And eventually he said, the mind is like still flowing water, that perceptions and thoughts continually flow. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, sensations of the body, the sounds we hear, memories, ideas, emotions, they all flow continually. But that which is aware of the flowing perceptions is perfectly still. It's not related to space or movement or time. It's ever present. So the mind is like still flowing water. There is the stillness of that aware knowing quality, and there's the flow of perceptions and forms. So that's what still flowing water means. And the biography Ajahn Jayasaro wrote of him that just was published a couple of years ago. It's called Stillness Flowing on account of that. That was say representing that mixture. So this is in a way, in terms of developing peacefulness and ease in our daily life. And I think yesterday was a question about how much time should we be engaged and how much time should we be away. Ideally, the mind doesn't make those distinctions, but there can be the quality of stillness and ease can be present even as there's a lot of flowing going on. And a lot of it depends upon that attitude of remembering not to get caught up in all of the flowing stuff, all of the patterns of experience and perception and the responsibilities that we have. That's the challenge, because it's very compelling. So that this all is speaking about a lot of mindfulness and wisdom, a lot of careful attention to the habits that we have, to recognize those and to let go of them, and to recollect and to change the perspective, rather than me doing something now to become enlightened in the future. Rather, there is the mind that is awake now. Here is the awake mind seeing the way things are. So not me and my, again, at that same time, Lumpur Sumedho would talk about changing the paradigm from me and my problems to the awake mind seeing the way things are, the Buddha seeing the Dhamma. That rather than I have got a lot of problems, Ajahn. Let's be serious. I need to be realistic. I've got problems. Well, in this moment, there is a perception of a problem arising, or something arises and we call it problem, and then it passes away. Or something arises and you forget to call it a problem, and then you remember. Oh yes, I mean, like this morning when I woke up, my first thought was, where am I? All right, Delhi. Where was I before I thought Delhi? I didn't. There was no knowing. And then chunk, there's the naming, Delhi. It lands on top of the experience of the moment. So sometimes we forget we've got problems. We say, I've got real problems. They're there all the time, Ajahn. I really have got a problem with greed, with anger. I've got a problem with debt. I am continually in debt, Ajahn. But if you notice, as Lumpur Sumedho would say so often, we tell ourselves these stories. I've got this problem. I've got an anxiety problem. I've got an anger problem. I've got a lust problem. I've got a debt problem. But when we say that I have this problem as if it's a permanent identity, but actually, if you pay attention, that the anxiety might arise quite regularly, but it's not there all the time. Anger or lust might arise quite regularly, but it's not there all the time. And then when you use the practice to look at that, I am feeling that I am angry, or I have got an anxiety problem, that there's a recognition of, well, what is it that could own? What is it that's the real problem? And what is it here that could really own it? Oh, that feeling of I, the owner, I, the doer, these are also, say, habits of mind, the way that we hold things. And if we change the view, if we change the perspective, then recognizing, that in this moment, there is this feeling of anxiety, it feels like this, and then it fades away. And then And again, in that era, in the mid '80s, late '80s, I heard Lumpur Sumedho saying this over and over again. I said, "Yeah, but Lumpur, I have got an anxiety problem. I worry all the time." He would say, "We tell ourselves these stories, and then we believe the stories that we tell ourselves. But if you look, are you really anxious all the time? Are you really angry all the time? Are you really lustful all the time?" And you realize halfway through brushing your teeth, I'm not worried about anything. Oh, right, my goodness, the Ajhan's correct. That you actually notice that's true. Things arise and pass away. I tell myself this story. I am an anxious person or an angry person or a lazy person or I'm a deluded person. But it isn't there all the time. Those perceptions and patterns arise and pass away. And that which knows those patterns isn't a person, is not. It's a quality of knowing, a quality of awareness, but it's not a person. It doesn't belong to a person. As I like to say, that which knows the person isn't a person. That awake, aware quality is a natural attribute of the citta. It's not old, it's not young, it's not female, it's not male, it's not human. It's not personal. It doesn't have a nationality or an age or like gravity. Do you have Indian gravity and British gravity? I don't think so. Indian oxygen and English oxygen, American oxygen. No, it's just oxygen. It's just gravity. These are non-personal qualities. And I would say that that quality of awareness, this knowing attribute of our citta, is exactly the same. So in developing insight, meditation, using the tool of vipassana meditation, it's a way of making this paradigm shift of going from me and my problems to the awake mind, knowing the way things are, going from me having to do something now to become enlightened in the future to being awake now, letting go of those habitual ways that we think of what we are, knowing that our name, our status, our job, our address, our relationships, these can only be convenient fictions. And that another of the teachings that I like to quote very often that relates to this area is a dialogue between the Buddha and Vacchagotta. So Vacchagotta was a wanderer from a different sect who used to come and meet the Buddha and ask questions very often. So there's many dialogues with Vacchagotta that you find in the suttas. And this particular one I find is very, very significant. And so Vacchagotta has come to the Buddha and has asked him, what happens to an enlightened being at the end of their life? Where do they go? Where do they reappear in a different realm? An enlightened being, an arahant, when the body dies, then does an arahant reappear in another realm? And the Buddha said, reappear does not apply, Vaccha. Well, do they not reappear in another realm? And then the Buddha said, does not reappear, that doesn't apply either. And then this being Indian philosophy, they have another two possibilities. Well, do they both reappear and not reappear? And the Buddha said, both reappear and not reappear does not apply. And then the fourth one, do they neither reappear nor not reappear in another realm? The Buddha said, that doesn't apply either. So Vaccha said, I'm really confused. One of these must represent the reality. It's got to be, that covers everything, doesn't it? And the Buddha said, well, Vaccha, there's no, you're asking the question in a way that presumes a reality that doesn't exist. So, and he gave a wonderful example. He said, say we had a little fire burning here. Just like out on the street on the Amaro this morning, there was the people, little children gathering around a little fire in an earthenware vessel on the street. So we had a little fire burning here, made of grass and sticks. And then the fire went out. And I asked you, where did the fire go? North, south, east, or west? How would you reply? And he said, well, I'd say the question doesn't apply because it didn't go north, south, east, or west, it just went out. And the Buddha said, exactly. The way you put the question implies a reality that doesn't exist. Reappears doesn't apply, does not reappear doesn't apply. Both reappears and not reappears doesn't apply, and neither nor doesn't apply either. And then he goes on to explain, and this is the part I find is particularly helpful. He then says that the Tathagata, and in that instance, talking about not just his own nature, but the nature of the awake mind, the awakened mind, the Tathagata, one who tries to describe the Tathagata in terms of material form, is unable to do so. That material form, by one trying to describe the Tathagata, would describe them. That's been cut off at the root, made like a palm tree stump, deprived of the conditions for existence, and been rendered incapable of arising in the future. That those feelings, those perceptions, mental formations, that consciousness whereby one trying to describe the Tathagata would describe him, that's been completely let go of, cut off at the root, made like a palm stump, and so forth. So the Tathagata, and he goes on to say, the Tathagata, the awake, aware mind, is liberated from being reckoned in terms of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. He is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. And so that, to me, this is very significant in terms of insight meditation and the practice of Dhamma, because what it's saying is that quality of awareness, the awake, aware quality of the enlightened mind, and what we are developing in the course of insight meditation, it can't be defined in terms of the five khandhas, in terms of our body, our personality, and our ordinary human reckoning. But there is a quality there. So he doesn't say it's that there's nothing, but he says the Tathagata, he is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. So that quality of awareness is real, it's present, but you can't define that in our ordinary terms of time and location and identity and the five khandhas. So for our thinking mind, that goes, what is that? How is that? Because our thinking mind depends on our experience of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, memory, imagination. All of our ways of thinking and our language depends upon time and space and identity and here and there and you and me and this and that. So all our ways of speaking and conceiving in our minds all depend on the world of the senses. So in that teaching, the Buddha is saying that that quality of awake, aware knowing, that the Tathagata, that principle of awareness, is profound, immeasurable, unfathomable. It is, and it has this awesome quality, like standing at the edge of the ocean and be in awe of the presence of the sea and the vastness of the ocean. Profound and the depth of that ocean, profound, immeasurable, unfathomable, like the great ocean. So there's a quality that is present, that is real, but you can't define it in our ordinary everyday terms. And so in the process of insight meditation, what we're doing is letting go of the habits of identification with the body, with the personality, with our memories, our thoughts, our ideas, and embodying that quality of awareness, that quality of knowing that is intrinsically unlimited and is can't be defined in terms of the five khandhas. So in terms of so that it's again, it's a tricky area to talk about, but I do feel that's a very helpful teaching to get to know and to reflect on. It's in the sutta is called Vacchagotta and Fire, Agi Vacchagotta Sutta, and that's in the middle length discourses. So I'm sure that you have the resources to look that up and read it for yourselves. But I do encourage that and to reflect upon that, because that to me that captures exactly the challenge, how to be in the presence of the five khandhas of people and things and our work and our responsibilities, and to be attuned to that, to know that, and to not be attached to that, to be not defining who and what we are in terms of the five khandhas, in terms of personhood, but taking refuge in being, say, embodying that awake, aware quality that knows the world, that is attuned to the world, but is not limited or defined by the world. Maybe the last thing to share before we have a little break to stretch our legs is there was a question yesterday about nada yoga. I forget who asked that. Someone was asking about the meditation on the inner sound, the nada, and so that's one of the way. It is various different spiritual traditions talk about the nada, the inner sound, in various different ways, and some of them are quite sort of grand and highly spiritual. Others are much more biological and practical. But the fact is that for most people, we are able to discern this subtle, continuous inner sound that goes on in the background of our hearing. And if you develop that as a meditation object and strengthen the awareness of that, that can be a very helpful reminder. So much of this practice or developing this, the insight into anatta in daily life, and to be applying that, we need reminders to help us not get lost in the details of our work, our responsibilities, our family, and the world, and so on. And developing listening to the inner sound is very, very helpful, because it's like a constant reminder that, oh, this is all just happening in the mind. This is all seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, woven together to create this particular representation of the world. And that it keeps, to listen to the inner sound, it is a reminder. It keeps everything in perspective. It helps the mind to recognize, oh, it's just, this is the pattern of this moment. That's what it's like now. And the attention is less drawn into the content, the detail of what we're experiencing, and knows, oh, this is just loka, the world, as it's taking shape in this moment. And so that the development of that, listening to the nada, the inner sound, is a very accessible and skillful means for supporting that. So I'll finish my opening reflections today on that score, and we can take 5 minutes to stretch your legs, and then we'll gather back together for a group sitting. Once again, to just begin the meditation by noticing how we feel at this moment. How's the body? Achy, comfortable, heavy, light, warm, cool? How is it? Let's take a moment to just appreciate the sensations and the presence of the body, its weight, temperature, any aches and pains. Not to judge or to criticize, not to grasp, but just to notice. Here it is. Here's the presence of the body. It feels like this. This is the material that we're working with on the physical plane. And what is the mood of the mind? Are we alert or sleepy? Anxious? Peaceful? Irritated? Calm? Kindly? What's the mood of the mind? Again, there's no right or wrong mood. But rather the appreciation of what is here. That's the starting point. This is where we begin, working with the mind as we find it, the body as we find it, this moment exactly as we find it. Tuning the heart, opening the heart to this present reality. Bringing awareness to the body and the mind. Let that awareness have its integrating influence. Being aware of the body, let that awareness be a cause for the balancing of the posture. So there's alertness, uprightness, energy in the posture, the spine growing to its full, comfortable, natural limit, and the rest of the body relaxing around that, soft and settled, fully at ease. And using the rhythm of the breathing as we feel it, as the breath comes naturally, picking up the rhythm of the breath as a way to center attention, to bring the attention to this present moment, present experience. Feeling each in-breath, each out-breath. Here it is. The breathing process. Using this as a marker, as an anchor for attention in the present reality. Now, earlier, I was speaking about loving kindness as a basis for meditation. So this is establishing the attitude of non-contention. Not arguing against or creating a aversion to aspects of perception or thinking. To practice on the basis of loving kindness means to be ready to work with the body, to work with the habits of mind, to work with the perceptions, the sounds of the world around us, noises of the street and nearby buildings. We don't have to make them into an enemy or a problem. It's just the sounds of the world. That's all. As we endeavor to focus the attention on the rhythm of the breathing, then, so we can be distracted by our thoughts and memories, our ideas, the mind racing this way and that, rather than turning our thoughts into a problem or an intrusion, an enemy, try to suppress them or get rid of them. With great patience, great kindness. Whenever you notice the attention has been carried away by a thought, or an idea, memory, a plan, as soon as that is noticed, then let go. Let go of that train of thought. Let go. Let the attention come back to the center, to the rhythm of the breathing. Great patience, great kindness, being ready to lose it, to get distracted again and again. Very gently, very patiently, very kindly, let go. Come back to the center. Just as if we are training a young child. If you have a fundamental attitude of kindness, compassion, then no matter how restless the child might be, we're ready to help, to guide, to support. We're working with the child, working with the mind, not against it. As the attention settles, rests more easily in the experience of the present, and we can let go of the breath as a specific object. We don't need that as an anchor. Open up the field of awareness to include everything. Like this room includes all of us. This large group of people all contained within this room. No one contending or competing, clashing with anyone else. So too, we can open up the heart to the flow of perceptions, sound, feeling in the body, ideas, moods. They come, they go, they change. They all happen here within this sphere of awareness. They're known here. So if the attention is steady enough, open up the heart to be fully accepting, receptive to the flow of all experience and perceptions. The sound of the building sites, my voice, feelings of the body, passing thoughts. To know it all as the world arising, taking shape, dissolving. Here's the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the way leading to the cessation of the world. It's all here. The world is the world of our experience. It's the only world we can meaningfully speak of. Speaking of the inner sound, nada, just as we can hear the sounds of the world around this building, the sound of my voice in this building. If you listen closely, in the background of the world of sound, external sounds, there's a continuous, high-pitched inner ringing tone, like a silvery, continuous sound, a stream of subtle sound in the background of our hearing. See if you can notice that. Like an inner white noise. Pay attention to that. You can use this both as a concentration object to fix the attention just on that, or one can develop it as a background so that in the development of that open awareness, It helps the mind not to get drawn into the content of thoughts and feelings, sounds and smells and tastes, sights, memories. A continuous, silvery inner sound, ever present, never begins or ends, encouraging an inner attention, an attention to the inner world. In this way, it's a good symbol of the Dhamma itself. Apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading inward, to be realized by each wise person for themselves. It's a sense object, it's a sound or a vibration, but it's a good symbol in the sensory world of those qualities of the Dhamma itself. There is no need to try and figure out what this inner sound is, whether it's some kind of cosmic vibration or the divine resonance of the Brahma worlds, or whether it's just the electrical charges of your ear cells firing off. You don't need to have an explanation or a story. You can know, here it is. It's present. If we can discern it, then it's useful. It can serve a helpful purpose. That's all. We don't need to create any more complication around it. Just let its presence be a reminder, helping us to be awake, to be aware, to be that knowing quality that is awake to the way things are. Non-personal, ever present. I'd like to open things up for any questions or anything that needs clarifying. It's about 10:30 now, so we have about 15 minutes or so. If there's any, yes, if you could wait for the microphone.
Thank you, Ajhan. I understand the Dhamma is a path of investigation and experience. And I can see that there is much benefit in the side of virtue and generosity and keeping the precepts. There's a lot of benefit, and there is vice, there's danger, there's harmful. There's like also the insight of non-self is a great way to release the heart. And to quote you from the book Island, you write that non-self is not a metaphysical or a philosophical position, but a skillful means to release the heart. Mm-hmm. And that's been very helpful. But when it comes to things like the senses are on fire, or there's a danger in gratification, those things, I find it difficult because I see that there's still a delight when I eat food. There's nice to chat to friends. There's beauty of nature. And so I try to understand why, and then I try to see that I don't understand like how we can experience things like there is afterlife and there's the cycle of birth and suffering going on for endless eons. And since we can only look at them as an idea and not an experience, my understanding is that thus we cannot really see that those things are dangers and they remains an idea, not an experience for many of us. So just trying to understand how, or do we need to see really those things, those small delights as really dangers. And yeah, thank you.
Lumpur Cha used to frequently say that you don't need to think about past lives or future lives to see how dependent origination works. That you can see rebirth happening moment by moment every day, hundreds of times a day. That cycle is happening, being born into delicious food or being born into carried away with a conversation with your friends. So that the process of rebirth and the suffering that comes from birth is not far away. It's just that when you see yourself being attached to something and eating too much or getting carried away with telling a good story, and you realize, well, that actually didn't happen that way, and I just told a lie just to keep people amused. The pain that you feel right there, that's the dukkha that comes from birth, or having eaten too much at lunchtime and then in the afternoon trying to stay awake. It's so hard to stay awake. I'm so full. Oh, that food was so delicious. Right there, that's the result of rebirth. You've been born into the food, and here's the Sokha Parideva Dukkha Domanassa Upayasa, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. It's not mysterious. And then so that seeing that the whole process of ignorance, desire, grasping, birth, and psychological death, and then rebirth, then that happens hundreds of times a day. If we watch, you see that it's not something mysterious or remote. So, and that was one of the main teachings. Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Buddhadasa also emphasized, that dependent origination and the way that ignorance, desire, suffering, and rebirth, they're not far away. It's very visible, but it's a psychological death and a psychological rebirth that we're able to witness. And so that whether we can map that onto a bigger picture of lives before this one and lives after this one, but you don't really need to, because you can see exactly how it works. When there's a lack of mindfulness, when there's a feeling of attraction, and then that tanha leads to upadana, grasping leads to bhava, but becoming leads to birth, and birth leads to sukha parideva dukkha domanasa upayasa, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. And then, if that dukkha is attached to, then it leads to more ignorance, and then a lack of mindfulness, and then tendency to follow those cravings again. One of the we ran out of copies of the book. One of the books I published this year was all about dependent origination and how to apply it in daily life. So you can find it on the website. It's called Catastrophe Apostrophe. I like obscure Dhamma titles. It's called Catastrophe Apostrophe, and it speaks about that in some detail. So you can, if you're unclear about how rebirth works on a moment by moment daily basis, then you can take a look there. But it's a mistake to think that if we are practicing Dhamma, then we don't experience pleasure or delight. There's one of the stories that Luang Por Chah used to tell. I think he got it from one of the commentaries. It's not in the Pali Canon, but it's in one of the commentaries where the Buddha and Venerable Ananda have been invited to a meal, and it's during the time there's a famine, and the only food they got to eat is this bran for horses. And Venerable Ananda says to the Buddha, it is wonderful, it's marvelous how the Tathagata can eat this very coarse, this very unpleasant food with total equanimity. And then the Buddha says, "Oh no, not so, Ananda. The sense of taste in the Tathagata is extremely acute." And he says, and he gives Ananda some of the food from his bowl and says, "Here, eat this, and you'll taste the food as I taste it." So Ananda takes some of this horse bran from the Buddha's hand, and he eats it, and there's this explosion of kind of incredibly exotic flavor. And then Ananda says, "Wow, this is incredible, this is amazing." So is this how the Tathagata tastes? Even such coarse food tastes so wonderful, so extraordinary, so delicious. What even more with some kind of refined and thoroughly prepared food would taste like? And then the Buddha says, "Yes, Ananda, this is how the Tathagata tastes, even ordinary coarse food, but yet his mind is not deluded by that." So Ajahn Chah would tell that story quite often. It's like, don't think that enlightenment equals a kind of a total blandness or a sort of switching off of the senses, so that every flavor tastes the same, every sight looks the same. So it's not the case. That in fact, like you have in that example, that the Buddha's sense of flavor was far more acute, but he was completely undeluded by it. It's still delicious, really delicious, but the mind is not making anything around it. And that's the key. So to enjoy a conversation with your friends and and to say, "Wow, this is really delicious," and then that's it. You don't have to have more of it. You don't have to hate yourself for enjoying it. It's just, here it is, delicious. Full stop. But that's really, I would say, that the practicing with it, just knowing it as it is. And in a way, the less that the mind creates a story about it and gets carried away with it, the more you can really enjoy it. How many of you, again, I'm not reading anybody's mind, but how many of us have had the experience of staying on the subject of food, as something really delicious, really delicious? You go, "Oh, this is so amazing, this is so fantastic, this is so wonderful. Oh, where did it go?" It was so wonderful, you ate it so quickly, you didn't even notice it. So you think, "I better have some more because I missed the first lot." Again, I'm not reading anybody's mind, but I've been there. Oh, so if there's a real mindfulness and a lack of attachment, then we even very, very simple things like the bran that the Buddha was eating. I remember many years ago when there was I think it was a retreat time at Chithurst Monastery. Ajhan Sujita was the abbot there, and somebody asked him, Ajahn, did you have any profound experiences during your retreat? And he said, I ate a potato. And you could see this look on his face. It was like this was a very extraordinary experience. So I said, yeah, it was just a regular potato, but it was something. And that mind, his mind was particularly quiet and clear, and just the act of eating an extremely ordinary vegetable was like Ananda eating the horse bran. Like, wow, this is extraordinary. So that when our mind is uncluttered, then the sense world is colorful, it's beautiful. The forms of nature. And Mahakassapa, who was the supreme ascetic, in his verses of enlightenment, he's describing how wonderful the rocks and the forests on the mountains are. So it's not a matter of not enjoying the sense world, but rather not attachment to that. That's the key. So, any other questions? Yes, please. Conveniently next door.
Could you please talk about how not to be self-critical, especially on the path of on the spiritual path? Like a lot of times I plan to meditate every day, but I'm unable to for many days. That's simply because I could be lazy or unorganized. Then I get disappointed with myself. And whenever that feeling of disappointment arises, I feel that kind of pulls you back and slows down your pace even further. Then how to deal with that? It's easy at times to be kind to others, but it's difficult to be kind to yourself. While other people could, see the growth in you, but you feel that you're not doing enough. Yeah,
Yes.
thanks.
What's your name?
Deep Sandhya. Deep Sandhya.
Deep Tariya.
Yeah, it means eve of lights.
So if Deep Tariya was your friend, you would, and you can use this as a kind of exercise, that if she was your friend, would you be so critical of her? No, not at all. It's not without a second thought. It's like instantaneously, if she came to you and said, "Oh, I'm so lazy. I get so distracted. I've got so many things I'm doing. I'm a terrible person," and immediately you said, "No, you're not. You're fine. You're a wonderful person." So for others, just as you were saying, you're immediately forgive and much more compassionate. So you can use that as a little mental exercise. If I was my friend, I wouldn't be so hard on me. And so that's a very simple exercise to do. Just to seriously do that. Just as you see your mind going into that, and if it was your friend coming to you to say, "I'm a terrible person because of this and this and this," look what's in your heart. Immediately, compassion and forgiveness and kindness, without a second thought, right? So pay attention to that, and just why should this being not be, worthy of kindness and compassion and forgiveness as other beings are? So that's a simple thing that we can do. Also, another interesting exercise that Luang Por Sumedho would encourage is actually to take the criticisms to an extreme. So when you hear your mind say, "Oh, I'm so lazy, I get so distracted," say, "Actually, I'm probably the laziest person in the world. There's nobody in the whole, not even just Delhi, but the whole planet. I'm sure I'm the laziest." And you can have fun with it, And then if you just catch the thought and expand it, no one is more selfish than I am, really. I'm probably the champion selfish person in the whole of India, probably the world. And you just extend the judgment, and then you find yourself laughing at it because you know in your heart it's ridiculous. So that and I found that a very helpful, because the tendency is for our habit, the habit of mind is say, no, I'm not that way, I'm not like that, I don't want to feel that way. But if instead you go in the opposite direction and you inflate it, then the absurdity of that reveals itself. And that, or if you're annoyed with somebody else, that you say, if you were dead, I would be happy. No, you know that catching the thought and inflating it reveals its emptiness. Sometimes if you push it away and want it not to be there and suppress it, you empower it. But by getting it front and center and getting it to speak up and inflating it, strengthening it, then it loses its power because all the lights are on. That's why how they I don't know how it is in India, but in the West, in fast food restaurants, they always have the lights very bright and the seats are quite uncomfortable, so people won't stay long. And the places where they want you to stay a long time and have lots of drinks, they have dim lights, very comfy seats. So you'll stay a long time and spend a lot of money there. So that the kind of expensive restaurants and bars are much more comfortable and they're dim lights. But when they want you to move and you want to be uncomfortable, they have the lights bright. And so this is like turning the lights up on your kilesa, on those self-critical thoughts. And they shut up, I can't do my job, if you're looking at me. It's like, so that if you get it front center and say, I am probably the laziest meditator, the most unworthy person here. I think I am probably the champion unworthy person. Yes, I am. And then it falls apart on its own. So I see the clock has gone round to past 10:45. So let's move on to the next phase of the day, and we can have the meal offering, and then I think we can do the Anamodana downstairs.
Actually, there are some offerings of some people who leave, so if you'd be willing to accept it now.
Here or down there? Sure.
Okay, so if there are people who would like to make offerings, can do that now.